Thank you so much for coming. We've been looking forward to having this meeting now, which has been delayed for obvious reasons, and we really appreciate you making the effort to come and meet in person. Thank you very much. First thing to say is a little declaration, and that what we've been doing in Bristol in the Biomedical Research Centre here over the last 5 years, we're just ending 5 years, is investigating how surgical innovation happens. It's been funded by the NHS via the National Institute for Health Research and also funded by the Royal College of Surgeons. But these ideas we're presenting are our ideas, not theirs. And then what I'm going to do, by way of warning you, is if I'm going to show you a photo of some surgery, I'm going to give you a little certificate to remind me to say to you, there's a picture coming if you want to look away. So I've been taught by our team that that's the best way to handle it. So there's about to be a picture that you might want to look away for. So surgical innovation, this is incredibly important. And I trained back in the 1980s here in Bristol. And during my training, things that were unimaginable then are now everyday practice. They really are. Things have changed so much. So when I started training, if we took out somebody's gallbladder, which is up here, we would literally make a cut this big, either across the top of the tummy or down the middle of the tummy. Somebody would yank out the rib cage, and it would be an hour of scrabbling down this deep, dark hole. And then the patient would be in hospital for a whole week, and they would need 3 months off to recover, 3 months off work to recover. So a week in hospital, 3 months off work. Nowadays, we do that operation as a day case. We do it through keyhole surgery, through little cuts, and the patient is back at work within a fortnight, easily within a fortnight. So it's keyhole surgery, day case surgery. That was unimaginable in the 1980s. And that's one example. Here's a picture then of something that's currently not done, but is likely to be done. This is robotic eye surgery, but that's not a real eye, that's a model. And at the moment it's hardly being done, but I can imagine in 10 or 15 years' time this will be standard practice. And robots have come into clinical practice over the last 20 years. And again, that is just a massive innovation that's occurred. And it's incredibly important. So the thing I want to just think about is why do we innovate? Why does innovation happen? And I think the main reason, and there are lots of reasons, but the main reason why innovation happens is because some surgeons, not all of them, some surgeons are naturally innovators. They just can't help it. Some people are naturally really innovative and creative, and they want to find better ways of overcoming challenges. They want to make things work better. There's an instinctive, innovative personality, and we see it in all branches of life. And there's no doubt some surgeons are really creative and innovative. Of course, innovation is aimed at making things better for patients too. Of course, we want there to be less pain, quicker recovery, better cure of cancer. We want all those things to happen as well. It's also, we innovate to make use of healthcare resources more efficient, to save money, to get people out of hospital more quickly. That all makes sense. And then there's this issue of prestige. And we've been talking about this over the coffee. I mean, so Cyril, we were saying, is it money? Is it prestige? But there's undoubtedly something about innovation that is prestigious for the surgeon, for the hospital, for the institution, and potentially for the patient, because I certainly know patients who proudly say, I had the brand new whatever, all singing, all dancing, whatever it is. And there's something very attractive and very prestigious about innovation. And it comes with a huge amount of what we call optimism bias. We just want it to work. New is better. We're incredibly optimistic about new things, and they're shiny and they're glamorous. And innovation somehow has a sense of a huge amount of optimism bias. But the problem is there is no innovation without risk. And Prof. Brené Brown is an American professor of sociology who's written widely about leadership and about vulnerability, in fact. And she says, of course, there's no innovation and creativity without failure. There's always going to be risk with innovation. And the big question is, how do we manage that risk? How are we honest and transparent about the risks, the known and the unknown risks associated with surgical innovation? And that's what we've been thinking about for 5 years, and I know that's what the Cumberledge report has investigated, and that's what we're going to be thinking about today. So next picture. And the reason why I'm showing you this picture is, this is an amazing picture, thank you, a surgical picture. See, the thing about surgery is it's a complex healthcare intervention. It has multiple parts to it, multiple people involved, not often like this, of course, but there's the anaesthetist, there's the surgeon, there's their assistant, there's the post-operative care, the pre-operative physio or something. There's multiple parts to surgical interventions, and all those things matter. And all those things can influence the outcome of a procedure, and it's co-interventions, we call them. And that means that how you innovate in surgery is really different to how innovation occurs with new drugs, new pharmaceutical drugs. Because I don't like to say they're simple, but they're relatively simple. There's not all those competing component parts. And so how you do it in surgery is different, and I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you. So in medicines, in new drugs, there's really well-recognised ways of protecting innovation happening and protecting that management of risk. In the UK, we've got the NIHR. We're glad to have people here today. In the States, we've got the powerful FDA, so they monitor things, and then we've got the European Medicines Agency as well. And it's really well accepted, this process of introducing new drugs. Really well accepted, and it involves research oversight in this phased way. But in surgery, it's different. We don't have this phased regulation, and this is the challenge, and this is why we need to be thinking about it. And you can still go down a research route, but very few surgeons do. The minority of surgical innovations are introduced within the umbrella of research. There are other things. There's a system within the local hospitals called committees, new procedures committees they call themselves, or clinical effectiveness committees. And they can look at whether an innovation is safe to do, or they can manage it, but they're not consistent across the UK, and they're a bit sort of localised, and we're working with them to improve those. I'm afraid to say that I think at the moment the majority of surgical innovations happen under the radar, is what we call it. It'll be somewhere in the bottom two. Some of them are registered with the local committees. An awful lot happen under the radar. And that really matters because it means that it's not documented necessarily. It means that what the patient, which we're going to be thinking about, is discussed. What's discussed with the patient is all over the place. There's no patient information sheet. And it means the outcomes and the harms that occur from the innovation are kept within the local surgeon's mind. The surgeon learns, but they're not necessarily shared, and then other people can make the same mistakes in other places. It really matters how innovation occurs, because it matters how this decision-making happens, it matters what's documented, and it absolutely matters that harms are shared as soon as possible to prevent further mistakes happening. If there's a mistake made, not a mistake, but if there's some learning from innovation happening in Bristol that results in a patient harm, that can happen again in Birmingham, in Brighton, in Bradford, in Belfast, unless it's shared. And that's one of the challenges at the moment. It tends to be kept local. And the decisions about what to do with the procedure, whether to further evaluate it, whether to stop it and abandon it, whether to pause, to modify it, are a bit all over the place. There's no clarity about how that happens. So we don't want to do harm, and we know there's been harms, yes, thank you. We'll hear stories later on, but there's been a number of problems. One just shown here, all these silicone breast implants had to be removed. And this surgeon is actually in prison. One of the problems with his practice was that he innovated on women with breast cancer without explaining to them that this was an innovative procedure. He's in prison. You know, we don't want that to happen. It's terrible. And so we're really looking forward to hearing from Cecile all about the findings from this report, which has looked into these challenges that have occurred. I'm thinking solutions. Now we're on to just the last bit. We don't want loads of red tape, do we? However, I think we do need a bit more red tape, and there's going to have to be a balance. The MHRA is the Medicines for Health Research Regulation Authority. I sometimes think we need an SHRA, a Surgical Health Authority regulation, something like that. We need some more red tape, but not too much. And we don't want this to happen. We want to avoid that. And so we really want to think about transparency today, transparency particularly between surgeons and patients, to explain it's new, to explain that they're hugely optimistic that it's going to be good for the patient, but also to be really honest that there are certain things that are unknown about this innovative procedure. There are unknown unknowns, and there are potential risks, and that the patient has a choice, whether or not to have the innovative procedure or to have standard care is something which I think is the way we can work forward with this. So thank you. We want the lights to go on, and that's lovely. Thank you very much. We'll end it there. Look forward to the rest of the day.